and hello there. It is Friday at noon and it is time for our Lunch and Learn with me, Dr. Polly Heil-Mealey at Abundant Health and Wellness. Now, Abundant Health and Wellness is located in downtown Humble at Main Street and Avenue C, so it's real easy to find us. Now today, we're going to be continuing our topic of mindfulness. And mindfulness is going to help us to improve our health. So I'm going to talk to you today about the 5 top things that you can do to improve your health in 2019, and also how heavy metals and pesticides contribute to cardiovascular disease, okay? And so we don't want you to have cardiovascular disease, and a lot of times when people come in, they want me to test them, and I'll say something like, oh, well, there's some vibratory signatures of heavy metals, and they always say, well, how do I get heavy metals? And so the answer is going to be different depending on what age you are in, but I've got some information here that we can kind of demystify that for you. So let's talk about the 5 things that you can do to improve your health in 2019. So one of the things is to eat more fruits and vegetables. And I know a lot of you, that's just like a dirty word. We don't want to eat fruits and vegetables. But the research shows that if you add just 1/2 of a cup of vegetables, that you have a 3% reduction in the likelihood of depression. So depression is something that we see all the time in the clinic, and the research shows that if you improve your vegetable and fruit intake even by 1/2 of a cup a day, that you reduce your likelihood of depression. So that's something that is important. The second thing is to sit less. So I know everybody's seen the commercials with the Desk where you stand up and you sit down and all that kind of stuff. I get up and walk around a lot in my office, so I'm not always sitting down. But they say that if you have a job and you're sitting down, or you are a couch potato and you sit down and all you do is just sit down, that you increase your risks of colon cancer, uterine cancer, and breast cancer. So who knew that just sitting around, even if you're in your office and you're doing your work, so you're not really just like being a couch potato, but just sitting down contributes to these kind of cancers. So the article didn't go in and say how that happens. I don't know. I would imagine, if I had to guess, it's because you're not moving your lymphatic system, because the lymphatic system is the circulatory system that works by moving your long bones. So that's moving your arms, pumping those arms up and down, and pumping those legs up and down. So your power walkers in the mall and that kind of thing, they're doing a great deal for their lymphatic system. People that just sit around all the time, they don't. Now, I'm very fortunate that I am up and downstairs multiple times during the day, and I have been for most of my adult life. I have normally, before having the clinic here, I normally worked in schools, and I was always on the 2nd floor, so I would be up and down those stairs multiple times during the day. And here in my home, I have an upstairs and downstairs, and so I'm up and down those stairs all the time. So that increases your lymphatic movement, and when you move the lymphatic fluid, that takes all of your pathogens, your cancer, your viruses, your bacteria, and all that, takes them right through the lymph nodes, and then you've got those little Pac-Man macrophage parts of your body, parts of your immune system that are in the lymph nodes. And so as that fluid is going through the lymph nodes, because you're moving, then those macrophage, those phagocytes, they go ahead and eat all the toxic material. So I would assume that that's why people that sit and don't move their lymph have more problem. We walk a lot downtown. We live in downtown Humble. We walk a lot. And so that helps to pump the lymph as well, okay? So get sleep, get enough sleep, but not too much sleep. So the magic number is between 6 and 9 hours. So people that do not get 6 hours of sleep, you're not getting enough. People that get more than 9 hours, you're getting too much, okay? So this is what it says. There's several interesting breakthroughs in research that shows the dose of sleep we get and how it relates to our health. It says here, let me get it up here where I can like to see it here. It says that too much sleep, right? Too much sleep increases, oh, my lights are going out. Too much sleep, as well as too little sleep, increases the risk of heart disease, diabetes, and the risk of heart attack. Okay? Healthy adults need, as I said, between 6 and 9 hours of sleep at night. The same research also found that partial sleep deprivation can lead to people craving higher energy foods and consume an extra 400 calories per day. So, obesity is a big deal, and obesity is linked to lack of sleep. So we want to make sure that all of you night owls out there, that you're sleeping at least 6 to 9 hours a night. I normally get 7.5 to 8, so I'm in the good zone. I just seems like even if I go to bed early, I still wake up early, and it's very rare for me, even on the weekends, to sleep past 7:30. So it's just one of those things that just doesn't happen for me. So make a stress management plan. Now I want to talk to you about this because we all have stress. We have children stress, we have husband stress, we might have wife stress, we have work stress, we have church stress, we have community stress, we've got political stress. We all have stress, okay? So what you want to do is you want to make a stress management plan. And so that can look different for different people, but I want to kind of go over some of the things that I do. One of the things you can do is journaling or writing. Now, most people that journal, it's a faith-based thing, but also when you're stressed, you can just write out your feelings, write out how you are processing, and that kind of takes the internal emotion and gets it out on that paper, and so it is a stress reliever. I know that when my husband died almost 20 years ago now, that I was instructed by my counselor to write a journal just to him. Well, 2 journals. Write a journal to God about how I was feeling and how I was processing, and then write a journal to my spouse saying how I missed him and what it was doing to my kids, or our kids and whatnot. So I did that, and it was great at diffusing the emotion. So whatever kind of stress you're going through right now, you can release it through journaling. The other thing you can do is discuss your feelings. And that's really hard for me. I am more of a stuffer when it comes to conversation. I don't like confrontation. And so I basically, if you hurt my feelings, I'm just going to stuff it and go away and pretend it didn't happen. But I will write it out in my journal, and I'll get rid of it that way. So some people don't like to write. They like to do discussions and that kind of thing. So if you're comfortable with that, again, you're moving that stress from the outside or from the inside to the outside where it can be diffused and it's not going to be harmful to you. The third thing is to do things you enjoy. So whether that is to sit in a dark room with a candle and some aromatherapy, that's kind of what I do sometimes. And I find aromatherapy very, very helpful to diffusing situations. It changes the atmosphere, it changes the way I'm processing, it changes negative emotions, and it helps you get those out. So that could be something, a hobby, taking a drive, taking a walk, working in your garden, anything that brings you pleasure, anything that brings you joy. You don't have to do it for a long time, to 10 to 15 minutes, and that'll just take that negative emotion and deal with it, okay? So focusing on the present is the fourth thing that I would like you to do. So a lot of times what gets us stressed are the what ifs. What if this doesn't work? What if I don't get a good report? What if my profit and loss doesn't come good this week? What if, what if, what if? Don't live in the what if moments. Live in the now, because you can only control to a certain extent what's happening now. And so refocus. Yes, that might happen in the future, but right now, this is what I can do. This is what I can do to manage. This is what I can do to prepare. This is what I need to do to maybe change the situation. So that's something that you could do. The fifth thing is cognitive refocusing, okay? So what that looks like is, yes, I got a bad medical report, but this is not the final say. I have this particular thing that I can do. I've got this particular resource I can do. So change the cognitive structure. So don't be negative. You know, if you are a Winnie the Pooh fan, which I am a Winnie the Pooh fan, if I had to pick a character that models my personality, I would be Tigger, right? Now, not because I'm bouncy, bouncy, bouncy all the time, because I'm not a bouncy person, but I always see the positive. I always find a way to, oh, it's not as bad as that because you've got this, 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 and this. So my personality is more like Tigger because I always see the positive. But a lot of people, they have a personality like Eeyore, okay? Woe is me, nothing's ever gonna happen good for me, I'm in this bad place, and you know, it's only gonna get worse, and every time something bad happens, it happens to me. So I want you to do cognitive restructuring. If you're someone who is always on the Eeyore side of the equation, and you always think the negative, pair up with someone who has a Tigger personality that always sees the positive. And that's going to help you reframe the situation. That's going to help you de-stress, because the Tigger personality is going to see things in a different way than you see it, and it's going to help you find some solutions. So we call that cognitive restructuring, okay? The sixth thing is downshifting, all right? So if you drive a sports car, then you know that downshifting just takes you out of that acceleration mode down to a lower speed. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean take some time off? Maybe. Does that mean put yourself in a time out so that you can have time to reflect and just diffuse the situation? Maybe. Okay, is it turning off the alerts on your phone so your phone doesn't drive you crazy? Most probably. I will just tell you, I do that. And so if you text me or you call me and I don't answer straight away, it could be because I'm in here with patients, but it could be because I've decided to give myself a timeout because I need to manage the stress, okay? So there are a lot of ways that you can do that. Find a way that works for you, okay? Maybe it's just to go out and take a walk. Maybe it is just to change the scenery. You break the pain pattern, okay? And so you want to be able to do that. The seventh way is to get in some regular exercise. Now, you don't have to be a gym rat. We've been talking about going to the gym on multiple occasions recently, and I do go, but I don't go for hours at a time, and I don't go every day. But it is a great stress reliever, and that might be something. There are people that are very, very wired for physical activity, and so when they are stressed, if they go out to the gym and they just do some real exertion for an hour, it just dissipates all the stress. So if you're one of those people, then that's a good thing for you to do. If you're not one of those people, it's still a good thing to do on a regular basis because it takes the mental stress, the emotional stress, and it gives it a place to go in the body so that you're dissipating that stress, okay? And then relaxation techniques. Now, I've already spoken about the aromatherapy, which I absolutely love, but you can also, you can pray, you can go out in a quiet place, in a park or something like that, get away from civilization as much as you can, and reevaluate things in a different environment and get some relaxation, and that's going to help with your stress. So these are 6 or 8 ways that you can detoxify and do some strategic stress reduction, okay? So hopefully that you're able to do that. The final thing that you want to do is drink more water. Now, we harp on this all the time because we want you to drink a lot of water. Now, the conventional wisdom says that if you drink 8-ounce glasses of water in a day, that you're going to get your necessary daily requirement. And that may be true, but that may not be true. So what is a closer approximation of the water you need is you need to drink half your body weight in ounces. Now, I'm sure some of you say, oh my goodness, I could never do that. Well, you actually can, but you have to plan for it and you may have to work up to it. But this is the thing. This research shows, okay, that if you are just 1% dehydrated, that you are going to impair your ability for cognitive thinking. So a lot of the depression, a lot of the stress, the emotional and the mental stress could just be because you're dehydrated. And so I don't know how they calculated 1% of dehydration, but 1% of dehydration will cause you to lose your mental focus. And I will just tell you, if I'm losing my mental focus, I'm going to be very, very stressed indeed. So hopefully these 5 tips will help you improve your health in 2019. Now, the second part of what I want us to talk about today, and this is an article that I read this week, and it says pesticides, metal exposure tied to increased risk of heart disease. Now, I don't want any of us to have any heart disease. And as I said earlier in the video, we have a lot of people that come in that present with heavy metal toxicity. Now, if you are a heavy sweater, okay, if your face perspires, if your hands perspire, if your feet perspire, okay, and you're not doing any kind of exertion, then you have most probably heavy metal toxicity. Now, you can get heavy metal toxicity from vaccinations. You can get it from the food you eat. You can get it from the water you drink. If you are of a certain age, say my age, and I'm in my 60s now, so if you're of a certain age, you were born in a time before there was such a thing as the Environmental Protection Agency, and you were born at a time when there was lead in the paint and lead in the pipes. Well, the pipes were lead, and so your water would be leaching out the lead, and so you would be getting heavy metals, especially if you were like me and you chewed on your playpen when you were little. You would most probably get that lead-based paint, and you would ingest it and that kind of thing. But now, if you're younger, so if you're like 30 or younger, this probably doesn't apply to you in that kind of way. But we do see a lot of 30-year-olds that come in and they've got that hyperhidrosis is the medical term, when you're just sweating profusely without any kind of exertion. So if that happens, then we know there's probably some heavy metal toxicity. So this particular article that I read said that pesticides and heavy metal exposure were tied to increased risk of heart disease. Now, they basically talked about your workers that work in industrial farming, and your workers that are in the metal producing, like your welders and that kind of thing. But I want to take it a step farther. First, let me tell you what they say. It says individuals who were exposed to pesticides were more than twice as likely to have conditions such as heart failure, heart disease, or an irregular rapid heartbeat known as arterial fibrillation, or we call it AFib, right? AFib is quote unquote incurable according to the medical doctors, and the medical doctors will say that if you have AFib, you are more likely to have a stroke. So we don't want to be messing around with AFib, okay? If you have been diagnosed with AFib, your doctor's going to want to have you on specific medications to thin the blood and that kind of thing so that you don't risk having a stroke. Holistically speaking, there are some herbal formulas that you could try along with the medication, and hopefully you'll be able to have a better outcome because you won't have to have so many medications possibly. So that's something on a case-by-case basis. Overall, if you have been diagnosed with AFib, you do want to take some medication to prevent a stroke. So don't just think you can do it all holistically. You may or you may not be able to. So that's something that requires an evaluation and that kind of thing. So be very, very careful if you have been diagnosed with AFib. All right. It says occupational exposures have been associated with clinical risk factors of cardiovascular disease and high blood pressure, but few studies have actually evaluated whether there is an association with the cardiovascular disease itself, which led them to this particular study, okay? So it says that pesticide exposure can be associated with nearly 6 times the odds of AFib. So you want to, if you have AFib, and AFib is on the increase, I'm just going to tell you, Steve and I went to his work about 6 months ago. They were having this, it wasn't Lifeline screening, but it was that similar kind of thing. and they asked us if we wanted to do an AFib test. And we said, sure, we wanted to do, and they did something on our finger. They put a little clamp on there to see if we had AFib. Unfortunately, neither of us do, so that's a good thing. AFib is something that you can very, very easily be tested for. But you are going to have up to 6 times the occurrence of that if you are exposed to pesticides. Now again, we're looking at this as an occupational exposure in this particular article, but I want to bring something to your attention. This, if you live in the city of Houston, okay, and a lot of my people do, you can find this information for your particular municipality by going to the Environmental Working Group website. So that is ewg.org, okay? Environmental Working Group, the initials, ewg.org, and type in water safety or something like this. So this is Houston Water. So Houston Water has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 contaminants that all contribute to cancer, okay? One of those is arsenic. Now, arsenic is a heavy metal. Chromium also is a metal. Now, the kind of chromium they have is not the chromium supplement that we have in the clinic, so don't kind of get crossways with that. So they've got all these other like big chemical names that I'm not going to embarrass myself by trying to recite over this Facebook Live. But all 10 of these contaminants, 2 of which are heavy metals, are in the Houston area water treatment, what you get out of your tap, okay? I know here in the clinic, our water is very, very hard. That means it has a lot of minerals in it. Now, minerals and heavy metals are not the same. I pulled the Houston one because Houston is a much bigger area, and I know I have people living outside the 77338 zip code, so I pulled this. So you want to go to the Environmental Working Group, and you want to see what contaminants are in your water. Now, you might say, well, Dr. Polly, that doesn't really have anything to do with me because guess what? I drink bottled water or I filter my water, and that's a good thing, and I'm glad you do. But you bathe, and you shower, and you brush your teeth, and you wash your face, and you wash your hands. And so unless you have a whole house filter, or you have a filter in your tub or a filter in your shower, you are getting the heavy metal contaminant because your body is going to absorb some of that water that you use in your daily hygiene. So I'm just going to throw that out there. I have looked for years at home filtration systems, and they are very, very expensive. I think they're prohibitively expensive unless you just are one of those billionaires and you've got tons of dollars to go around. Be careful, because I'm understanding that they're going to raise the tax rate, so you may not have that. But whole house water filter treatment, to the best of my knowledge, right, they are about $6,000 to $8,000 for a good one. So I know a lot of people just don't have that much extra cash floating around. So you need to be concerned that you may be getting your heavy metal through your water supply. So thankfully, most of us have water filters on our refrigerators. We've got water filters on our, we have a pitcher that we can fill up and we can pour out of, and we've got really good filters for that. But just be aware that if you are boiling potatoes or you're making rice or you're doing whatever, cooking with water, if you don't pour that out of a filtering device, you're probably getting arsenic and chromium, and that's going to be leached into your food. So that gives you a stronger heavy metal exposure, okay? The other thing I want to talk to you about is glyphosate. Now, glyphosate, I've got this huge big report. It is, let me see how many pages. Let me see, the first page, I printed it. The first page is 159 to 184. So it's almost a 30-page report here. So I'm not going to go over all of this, but it is a toxicology report on glyphosate. Now, glyphosate is a chemical in the pesticide Roundup. Now, we all use Roundup in our yard, or we used to. I mean, it's very, very common in our industrial farming, I will just tell you here in the United States, your farmers will spray the rice, the grain, the wheat, whatever. They will give you, they spray it twice with Roundup. Why is that? Because Roundup, if you've used Roundup in your yard, you know that you spray your weed and within a couple of days the weed just shrivels and it's dead from the root, and thank God it is. But if they spray it on the grain, the wheat or the corn or whatever, then what that does is it shrinks all of the green and it pops out that kernel. Now, it makes, for the farmer, they get a bigger yield when they're harvesting their grain, but the grain is coated with this glyphosate, and this glyphosate is what goes into our flour products and what goes into our bread, our pasta, and that kind of thing. And it's the glyphosate that is in the pesticides that is the heavy metal, where most of us are getting the heavy metal in our diet. Now, when you are when you're cooking, right, and you're eating a lot of pasta, you're eating a lot of bread, you may become what we call gluten intolerant. In fact, I heard a doctor about 10 years ago say that we no longer ask people if they are gluten intolerant. We now ask them to what extent they are gluten intolerant. And you know, glyphosate is banned in the European countries. And so when you go to Italy or you go to England or you go to Germany, I think Spain also has banned it. When you go to those countries and you eat bread, guess what? It doesn't affect you. Now, when I eat bread, I don't get tummy distress, but what I get is a lot of weight gain. I can gain 2 pounds overnight if I go out and eat Italian food, and I don't eat that much. I mean, I'm just saying I don't eat that much, but because it is, you know, you've got your garlic knots and you've got your fettuccine and all that kind of stuff, it's going to make me gain 2 pounds overnight. Why? Because of the heavy metal, the glyphosate. Now, the body, because the body is smart, the body sees, oh, I've ingested glyphosate, and so it pushes it into the fat cells until I can get rid of it in order to protect my visceral organs. And so you are getting glyphosate if you're eating a lot of bread and pasta and that kind of thing. Now, I'm going to tell you also, there's another report that I recently read that 95% of the wines from California, right, which I know Napa Valley and Sonoma Valley and all that, that's where most of the American-made wines, California-made wines are produced. 95% of the wines that were tested contained glyphosate. So this is why when you have a glass of wine, if it is a Californian wine, you could get a really, really bad headache because it is the glyphosate. So you want to make sure that if you do enjoy a glass of wine, you want to make sure the country of origin, because if it is here in California, you're most likely going to be ingesting glyphosate. Glyphosate is in the pesticides. I have a paper here. This comes from a paper, Frontiers in Chemistry, and it says heavy metals are the inorganic elements that are 5 times the specific gravity of water, okay? These include, now this is in our pesticides, arsenic, lead, cadmium, mercury. Okay, so all of these are on our foods, sprayed on our foods, unless we buy organic. So if you buy organic foods, they won't have these pesticides sprayed on them. There are ways that you can take these things off, but if the pesticides are used in the soil, then the roots are going to take this up and it's going to be in the food that you eat. So I want you to be very, very careful with your food. I want you to be very, very careful with your wines and that kind of thing, because I don't want you to have cardiovascular events, which is what you are more open to, more susceptible to, if you have a lot of pesticides and heavy metals in your internal environment. So I can see that we have a lot of comments, and so I'm not sure if I have responded to everything, but I'll go back. My time is just about up, And I just want to tell you guys, I appreciate you when you stop me in the city, you stop me at a meeting and you say, Dr. Polly, I listened to your Tuesday testimonials, I listened to your Facebook Lives, and I really appreciate what you give out. I appreciate you letting me know that you, number one, that you listen, and number two, that you enjoy it, because that's what this is all about. This is all about information. This is all about getting things out there that you might not know, and it might make a big difference in your health. And so that's what we're all about here, is helping you to reclaim your health, which is your birthright. So this is me signing off. Have a great weekend. Get some rest. Be mindful. Develop a successful de-stress strategy. Okay? Take care, guys. See you next week.